Yes, that's it. Okay, we have about 1.5 hours, and Chautuileo will guide us through her story about liberating leaves and Indigenous Liberation. And this learning session is part of our year program. We have a program where we follow the 4 seasons. And right now it's the fall, and we are unlearning and letting go of leaves. And decolonization is a theme that we're we're following in the month of October. And Chao will tell us a little bit more about this. Can I give the word to you, Chao?
Yes. Hello all, do you hear me well? I hope you're doing fine. It's so nice doing this online, because sometimes we forget that we had 3 years of online, and now I'm going to all places, meeting people. And while meeting people, sometimes you also not meet people because we don't have the time. We are rushing. I need to get the train. I need to get something. I need to go to the store. And with the Zoom, I think I have more time. I really prepared it, and I see you now, and I see your faces, and for half an hour, one half an hour. So that's really good. I wanted to start with my conversation with Noor, because we had, of course, a talk about what are we going to do and what can I say and how can I possibly, give you a story that might be helpful in the time we are now. And I was thinking, well, the first thing I always do with autumn is going to the forest and making sure that I see a lot of trees and trying to find out, like, how can I remove myself from the city, because sometimes living in the city is also overwhelming. So going to the forest is one of the things I really like doing. And then I'm looking at the forest and I picture myself as a kid, because I was always looking to trees when I was a kid, and I saw the leaves falling, and sometimes it made me sad, like, okay, they are really falling now and we are losing them. Isn't it a sad process? I was thinking at that time. Now I don't say I'm really grown up now, but I look differently to the trees and to that whole process. And I think this is also a great metaphor for us to, of course, to learn and to see trees as wisdom keepers. And I think we will never fully understand the amount of wisdom they have, the amount of wisdom they can pass on to us. I think we never fully understand, like, how the ecosystems are working and the role trees are having in that system. And I think having that said, let's find out how we can use trees and leaves to understand societal challenges. Can we do that? Can we make this a comparison? Can we use this metaphor for us to have and grasp or have an understanding what is happening now? And for me, I always want to understand the concept of liberation. And it means for many people, for many people, it is different. Like for many communities, they always seek a sense of liberation, and sometimes we don't even know that someone needs to have the liberation. So this metaphor, I will guide you through my story, the metaphor of liberated leaves, but we need to have more trees involved in this story. So you will be introduced by 3 trees, the trees of forgetfulness, the trees of memory, the trees of reciprocity. And at the end, we get, hopefully, liberated leaves. So this is kind of the structure, and I hope that I will be on time done so that we have also room for questions. And I see this as learning session, but also a dialogue session. So for us to to be invited to tell your own story, or to just to listen, or to hold space. So let us start. Okay, let us start. Here. Yes, a tree of forgetfulness. This is an amazing friend, Chief Dada. He comes from Brazil, and Chief Dada is a representative of indigenous peoples. And he is really making a move I really like, because it's inspiring, going to places and talk about your rights, talk about your needs, and ask people to be responsible and to act according to that. And it's really nice to see also, like, many people from, like, the youngsters are also taking doing the same things. And I'm most of the time quite shy. Many people don't see that, but I'm a shy person. So I always want to do something. I always want to act, but how can I do that? How can I be part of the liberated leaves? Can I be part of that? Can I be liberated from? What should I be liberated from? So that was like my own process internally. So I do want to be liberated. I do want to be part of that. But then you need to dive into your dark side, like the intergenerational trauma, the things that really was bothering you for not being liberated. So, and many people, we start to forget it. We start to forget the pain and the suffering of our ancestors. We start to forget, like, what really happened. What was the role of the Netherlands, for example, in colonization? We don't even have this in our educational system. So how can we possibly know? And I see the Netherlands as one example of a big tree of forgetfulness, because we don't know. It's like a collective amnesia we are in now. And we should know, but we need to also to know that it wasn't our fault that we don't know, because people were erased from memories. We were sitting there, and from the indigenous perspective, we were forbidden to even know our cultures. So the whole idea of assimilation, it really worked well. The genocide, it is almost a complete one. So when you think about Suriname, for example, 79% of all the indigenous living in Suriname are vanished by colonization, vanished by genocide. So that means that the Netherlands, they do have a part in this. They do have a role in making sure that the tree of forgetfulness isn't growing, because we need to make sure that the liberated leaves of that particular region are liberated. So when you go to the Caribbean, less than 1% of all people are indigenous. So it's really, we did a very good job in making sure that the people were actually vanished. In Brazil, I didn't even know, but it's also less than 1% is still indigenous. So can you imagine that there are so few people left and many people died? And the amount of wisdom is still there. The amount of wisdom, like, indigenous people, they protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. So there is not so much forgetfulness in that community. So how did they do that? How did they maintain their knowledge? And how did they make sure that the assimilation process wasn't really for them? So we need to dive into the bad story. So what is it then what we forget? And of course, colonization, it's built on capitalism, it's built on racism, it's built on many bad ideas, like how can we dehumanize people? How can we make sure that people feel less than us? How can we make sure that people are actually sold? People are taken. Women were raped. How can we make sure that whatever is left inside the person, like being indigenous, is being taken away? And we make sure that the Christian values, or whatever values they have, it's now put in that person. So it's not only human that they colonize. Of course, it was also nature. when you see, for example, an animal like this bird, you can easily rename it. You can say, well, I just discovered this bird and I'm going to rename it. Exactly like a tree on the right. It is actually the tree of my community. I'm a Mapuche-Pewenche. So this is the Pewen tree. But now it's called Araucania because people thought it's a better name. So, of course, this whole climate crisis we are in, it's a colonial crisis. We always say that. It's a colonial crisis and built on people with racist ideas. So, for example, the founder of ecology, Haeckel, had made this drawing, and you see that there is this kid or I don't know, person, and it's like the tree of apes because they are less, or maybe they are apes. They are considered as being an ape species. So it's sometimes hard to get into that history to make sure that we understand that the Enlightenment, it wasn't so much enlightenment. There were many ideas coming from that era are still valid very much now because we're talking about ecocide. But how can we maintain the distinction between human and nature? How can we still see it as solely an ecocide and we don't include genocide into it? And I think for me, it's really good to have an understanding of the history, to understand what the Netherlands actually have done, you know, slavery. It's this disgusting idea that you can put people in boats and ship them to I don't know where because they need to work. So the idea that you can see people as work tools and you can force them to do that, that's horrible. And we made big money out of it. So we were built on the capital that is actually made out of slavery. And for me, it's hard because you can dive into the data. You can make sure that the forgetfulness is being replaced by data. So we know now, we know better. And we have many researchers now diving into it all because, first of all, we didn't know. But I was also thinking about, yeah, but we're also talking about families. Like families were torn apart. Mothers were ripped from their motherhood. People were actually, losing their children. So to have an understanding about forgetfulness, we also need to find out how can we mourn, how can we remember, and how is this possible that sometimes we don't even know what to remember. I know many communities of former enslaved people, they say, I don't have any clue about my ancestors. It can be Ghana, it can be any country, it can be, I don't know, and what is my attachment to that place? I mean, they have also a tree of forgetfulness, and it's really hurtful that you never can trace it back because it was taken from you. So the whole family tree, it's actually a privilege to have that drawn out because many people, they don't have a family tree. They have the tree of forgetfulness. And in that sense, we need to see also that sometimes we really want to understand the suffering of indigenous people. We really want to understand it. And we are having this idea that the climate crisis can be an entry point for more understanding. But it's more than that. And the role of the church, for example, it's interesting to see that, for example, last year or this year, the doctrine of discovery, the legal paper that actually made it happen. The legal paper was responsible for the colonization over indigenous peoples and over land. And that was rejected by the church not that long ago. And many people saw it as a victory. They were shouting, and yes, finally, the church said it it was like even an English word I can't even pronounce, but it was rejected. For me, it was also a moment of mourning. I needed to sit down, because does it mean that of all the suffering, like the 500 years of colonization, more than 500 years, it was all for nothing? So that means that the rapings, the killings, the genocide, it shouldn't have taken place. But it did. It did have take place. It did, I was flabbergasted by my moment of tears, because I thought it should be a victory, but I couldn't felt joy on that time. So now I see that reparations is a very hard concept, and it doesn't mean that we are doing it with a lot of joy. Of course, we need to do it, but we need also hold space for the tears, and we need to hold space for that liberation. It is a long way to actually be liberated. So we need to dive into that dark side in ourselves. Like, why can't I feel the joy? Maybe there is still trauma left. Maybe there's still something I need to remove from myself in order to be liberated. So the tree of memories. I think for me, when we talk about childhood, I was always climbing in trees, and I actually fell out of a tree and I broke my leg because of that. But I was always looking in the forest to climb, and I had dreams about climbing into the highest tree I could possibly find, and to look at the surroundings when I was in the tree. I was in Amazon last year, and we were also climbing into a tree. And it was like one of my wildest dreams came true, because I was in a tree in the Amazon, and I was really having the day of my life. But in terms of memories, we spoke about forgetfulness, but how can we, how can we remember? That is like one of the stepping stones of reparations, one of the stepping stones of decolonization, that we actually can remember. And we need to take time for doing that. Like, what is this? And I saw this image a long time ago, and it really hit me, because this is something that we all should do. In order to remember, we need to repair. We need to find out, how can we do this? How can we find a language for doing that? And for me, that is words, or it's like making music, or it's like being creative. But for others, it can be something else. But in any sense, in any way, making memories is also like a verb, making memories. And making memories is something that we can do all together. It can be even a collective process that you are, doing it together. And no. And I think that in that collective process, we found each other in the Netherlands. All indigenous diaspora are making the way to the 12th of October and the 14th of October to remember. And for many people, it is a festival. They go to Pakhuis. But for us, it's also like a hidden agenda to remember, to reclaim, to make sure that we are doing an act of reciprocity to our ancestors, to have a ceremony. We are building up a movement, and it's actually based on the notion that we do need to remember. And in terms of memories, most of the decolonization process we always heard is decolonize universities, or decolonize, I don't know, musea. But for me, it's also like decolonize family stories or history stories. And there are so many things we can focus on. We can focus on the bad stuff, like what I did now, like the horrible dark side of the Dutch colonial history. But there were actually also good people in history that were part of that resistance. And the good people are actually people that had the amazing bravery for standing up against colonization, and they stood up against power balance. They stood up against racism, and I can't explain how much joy I feel by reading all the stories or by hearing the stories. It's not only people; they're also animals. Like at the right, you have Mocha. Mocha is actually the original name of Moby Dick, and Mocha was in the I don't know, maybe in 1700s. It attacked boats, and it attacked many colonizers. And nowadays we have also an uprising in Wales attacking boats. So I am feeling the joy of connecting the past and the present by just looking at that, you know, at the voiceless brave warriors. And I don't know if you can see the guy with the hat on. I don't know if you can see him. He's actually from Haiti, and he's one of the he's part of an amazing community, because Napoleon, for example, he wanted to, you know, to put down the resistance and put down all the people that were the former enslaved people who run away, the Maroons, for example. And he wanted to make sure that it won't happen, the resistance, because he's Napoleon. So he asked even Polish soldiers to join the army, to make sure that all people were executed. And 5,000 Polish soldiers came to Haiti, and they were actually, you know, sitting there and thinking, why should we fight for Napoleon? I mean, to be honest, why should we? And they listened to the stories about of the former enslaved people, or the enslaved people, and they said, no, we are going to fight alongside with you. We are going to help you. And you know, I would say a curse word to Napoleon, but they said, no, we are not fighting for Napoleon anymore. So the people who are actually who went there, they felt like they were part of that resistance. So you have many Polish people now, or many people with Polish ancestors who had actually fought alongside the former enslaved people. So I really like those kind of stories, and we should hold space for those stories more, I would say, because when we talk about liberated leaves, these people were actually doing the hard work for becoming liberated, or for us to be liberated. So, for example, Che Guevara as well, he is one of the most amazing persons, and I almost fell in love with him, but you cannot fall in love with him. That that's impossible. But it's so funny to see Che Guevara always smiling. He's always that joyful, and he gave up his life for indigenous peoples. And we maybe see him as a communist, or as a rebel, or as someone that really, of course, he was not the person that did the revolution without violence. He was really into the violence, so that was his methods, and he was really shooting people, killing people also, he did. So, but he did it with the purpose of liberating other people. So this is really, for me, amazing. And there's so many other stories I can't even give you now. But this is the woman I also want to talk about making sure that we are creating a memory of this woman. She was pregnant, you can see, and she was in Haiti, fighting within the resistance. So can you imagine that she was not even fighting only for her child? No, she was fighting for the liberation of all. So her name is Solitude, and she's now being seen as part of the collective history, but it wasn't like that for many years. So integrating her in my work means I actually create a memory for you, and she is now part of your memory. And Solitude, we don't know what happened to the child, because all people in the resistance were executed. She was able to give birth, And after that, she was also executed. So we don't know what happened to the child. But I do want to integrate her in my story, because I think that part of the memories is also that many women, they really lost their children and lost motherhood. So when we go to the tree of liberated leaves, I really like the word and the title that we have created, Noor and I, to make sure that we do have something to hold on to. And we go to the wall, maybe we go to the forest, and we can think of how we can feel a liberated leaf for ourselves. So this is in Amsterdam. I think this was last year. And you see the kids there running or, playing, being together, indigenous, non-indigenous, just kids from Amsterdam, And at the left, you see a boy, and he is creating a memory for himself by integrating a memory of his ancestors. And what he is doing now is, there is a story about an ancestor, and he's called Galvarino. And Galvarino was taken by the Spanish colonizers and chopped off his hands. They chopped off his hands, and he was still fighting, but then with blazes. So this is a kid just being playful and integrating that story for his own. And the other kid is having symbols of indigenous Asians, like, I don't know even what symbols they are. But it's really amazing how kids actually shaping memories by making sure that they dive into the history. And they are really like being guided by the parents or by the people to, to have an creation, to have co-creation. So it's also making memories by dancing, by having cultural gatherings. And I know that when I saw this group for the first time, it hit me really hard, because they were expressing an old historical, like, it was like maybe they created a story and about the sun, and I didn't even know what the name of the sun was. Maybe it's called Inti. And I was really I saw the dancing, and I got emotional, because it was so interesting to see that people, Quechua in Amsterdam, are actually doing this. And they don't have a space to perform. They don't have the money to do that, so they do it in the open. And also with the autumns coming up, there's a lot of, like, of course, raining, and they're doing it under a viaduct. And that's really like something that's, I also want to say that people here, they really want to dance, and they really want to liberate themselves through dancing and creating then the memory for themselves. This is also an interesting memory for me, because I saw this woman, and I don't know how you view this woman, but it was with so many, it was with some, the confidence of her. And she is really like walking next to us. And I don't even know her name. I don't know where she's coming from. I don't know her. I do know the person at the left, and he's an elder, and he was making sure that for the picture, he stood, he went back to make sure that she was at the front. And I really liked it, that he was really making sure that she was in the spotlight. And that is really something I always like, when elders, the wisdom keepers, are making sure that the youth are at the front and not them. The youth needs to be seen. The youth need to, be visible. So when we talk about memories, we can also erase memories. Of course, we can make sure that some memories aren't a memory anymore. So you see, for example, a friend of mine smashing down the church. And although it's a memory for me, from the personal point of view, it's a bad memory, because I was taken by a nun. I got stolen right after my birth by a nun. So for me, this image, this memory is healing. So he actually, this this person, my friend, is actually erasing a memory. So making sure that that trauma is being smashed down and creating simultaneously a new memory by viewing it as an act of reciprocity. He actually helped me healing. This is for me healing. And there are other indigenous diaspora who got stolen and are living in the Netherlands. We are actually called the stolen generation. So there are many from Colombia, from Peru, from Brazil. You have many from, I don't know, all, it's part of this colonial history. And having them all there together, smashing a church, it was a collective memory. I can't even express the value of that. So I wanted to give also an example of the tree of reciprocity, because we have this colonial history, and we have a very bad role. We have played a bad role in it. How can we make sure we do something like reciprocity towards the people, towards all the people who actually have intergenerational trauma still? So I was thinking, what is reciprocity then? And how can we make sure that we understand the art of reciprocity? And in many indigenous cultures, it's so normal. You have Aini, you have Trafkintu, and I try to learn in every indigenous word more ways of reciprocity, like, because there are so many words that can, that you can understand that reciprocity is actually a big part of how to live in balance. It's a major important principle. It's a verb. It's a philosophy. It's so much more than only a philosophy. You can actually put it into practice. So this is a bridge somewhere in Peru, and I learned about the story that it was actually broken, and they made it, they repaired it of sweetgrass. So they did it together, and you need to, I don't know the word in English, nut, I think nut, and then it becomes bigger, and then bigger into a rope. And then you need to make it longer. So all people need to join, all the communities from both sides, they need to join, because if not, you never get the bridge. So reciprocity is actually a tool for making sure that the bridge is actually happening. And you can do reciprocity within generations, reciprocity between the past, present, and the future. You can play with it. You can think about your own acts of reciprocity in your daily lives. And for me, it is also nice to see that it always comes along with reparations, because or creation. So you need to act. Actually, you need to make sure that things are actually, getting together. But the world is not so harmonious as we think, and still words as racism is very much part of our daily lives. And even when we want to act good, even when we want to do better, even when we want to create solutions like climate solutions, we are still doing it wrong. And there is this research that said that less than 1% of the climate funding goes to indigenous people. So considering this, and I just spoke about the colonial history, the genocide, the assimilation, all the bad things that happened to us, and that we are still protecting 80% of world's biodiversity. But when it comes to money, we still get nothing. So do we need to be that racist? Do we need to do this? And for how long? Is there something that we can stop it? Should we intervene? Should we tell something about it? I mean, I want for this person she's looking at me. I want her to be liberated. I want her to feel like she's also part of the liberated leaves. But it's not working when I still, let it happen. And this is my act of reciprocity that I'm thinking, okay, connecting the dots. So I am now based in the Netherlands, and I have a responsibility to act, to make sure that I stand alongside my friends now, my indigenous friends from Suriname, and also try to find out how can I make sure that the Dutch people, they do understand that they still have a role to play in their responsibility towards the history. They still have a role to play. So, and they were not going to do it on their own. So I need to guide them in a way. I need to make sure that it's a platform. And now we call this a website. But I need to make sure that the Dutch people have the possibilities to do their act of reciprocity. And it's an invitation. And it is an invitation coming from love, of course, and the willingness to undo the colonial pain. It's also an invitation to make sure that the Suriname indigenous are actually get the space to share the story, because we spoke about the excuse for the former enslaved people, the excuse of the king, okay, we were sorry. They still get no money, but it's for me interesting that the king didn't mention indigenous people in his excuse. He didn't say sorry to us, and I'm not sure if sorry would do the trick. Like I said before, the rejection of the doctrine of discovery. Yeah, the jurist said we reject, but it didn't feel great to me, though. It didn't. I wasn't healed then, so the healing part needs to be still. It's a journey. So back to the act of reciprocity we can do now. Of course, we can dive into the history. We can dive into all that, but we can also dive into the now. And nowadays, 0.30% are going to indigenous people every year. So is there something we can do? Is there something we can highlight? Well, I did some research for all of us, and I saw that many NGOs get a lot of money. So it would be like interesting to find out how can we spark this conversation, not only to target multinationals, that they are colonizers and that they are doing bad things, but also invite NGOs to share, to do their act of reciprocity. Why can't you share? And I know that Milieudefensie is the first believer within the NGO world of the climate movement that said, yeah, we are going to share. And some people say, yeah, we do support indigenous in Brazil, but we are now based in the Netherlands here. So I'm talking about your act of reciprocity towards indigenous people based in the Netherlands, because you have colonized, at least the ancestors have colonized Suriname, and it's for a reason that we are based now in the Netherlands. So it's interesting to have done this research, and I don't have the time to do it better. We should have hire researchers to do that. We should have the money to follow the money. Is the money actually go to indigenous people? How can we make sure that we echo the message that there is racism within the climate solutions? So a lot of things we can do. And I created also, together with my friends and with my organization, a campaign. So I was thinking, let us create a platform. Let us make sure that people understand that this is happening now. So she's actually the one that is getting the money. So that's actually interesting to see that she's from, I want to introduce her also to you. She's from Suriname. She's 27 years old. She is, can you, let me see, to Latin, okay. She's actually a researcher herself. She has like a major or a master in agricultural blah blah blah. I don't know, to be honest. But she was also an activist, and not by purpose, because the 2nd of May this year, there was this truck, and this truck wanted to go into the rainforest and wanted to, of course, do something bad. So the indigenous, they stood up and they said, no, truck, you are not passing. So you will stop here. And the people in the truck actually killed 2 indigenous earth defenders. So it was like an execution on the spot. 5 are actually still in jail. And a lot of tensions came afterwards. A lot of like fear, but also anger. Like, this is us now still fighting for our lands, and we are not in constitutions. There are so many, jurisdiction that says that the Suriname state needs to act and needs to respect indigenous rights. But how can you claim indigenous rights when you are not existing in the law? So the law is not on our side at the end of the day. So she was that brave to initiate a lot of demonstration. So she went to the small villages and asked people, please join this movement. We need to act now. We need to find out what happened to the persons who died, who were executed. We need to liberate the 5 people who are still in jail. And we need to make sure that we are one force. So she did it while she was just a person, a normal person, someone just having the whole life in front of her. And I asked her, like, what can I do for you? Like, how can I be of servant? How can I make sure that my active reciprocity is actually like a good one? I don't want to mess up. I don't want to intervene. I don't want to create unintended negative consequences. So how can I help you? And she said, in our culture, it always goes to the elders. So the elders are always the ones that gets the money, that gets the possibility to make decisions. And we as youngsters, we are not in that position. And I do want to create a change. And I do want to have an own foundation to make sure that from my vision and my view, things are going to change. And I said, well, if that is the case, if you want to create a foundation, what would you do then? And she gave me like this whole plan about her objectives and what she wanted to create. She wanted to create more educational platforms to make sure that people understand their rights, to make sure that people understand how to be more in connection with nature, how to create more regeneration in their own, for example, in their own agricultural small businesses. So she was really like thinking out loud. And I said, if there's anything I can do now is to raise money for your idea, to make sure that I ask gently to the Dutch audience their way of reciprocity. Due to the colonial history, it shouldn't be misunderstood. It shouldn't be hard to not to do that. So, and then we find out how far we come. And the money campaign, it will end at the 10th of January, because that is symbolically for the indigenous Suriname a very important day, that there was a treaty. And the treaty was mentioned that they had an own nation and that the Dutch government should respect that. So nobody knows about that treaty, but it's actually a very important one, because that was actually the doctrine of autonomy. So we can have also a doctrine. So I'm going to switch my own trauma related to the doctrine of discovery into the doctrine of autonomy. So the doctrine of liberation. I can maybe even create a doctrine of reciprocity. We can have a doctrine of decolonization. We can have many doctrines. So let's skip then the doctrine of discovery and make sure that it will be a doctrine of reciprocity. So for me, it is crystal clear. It's crystal clear that the leaves, for becoming liberated, we need to have time. We need to hold space. We need to make sure that we understand that decolonization for many people, it's not a buzzword. It's not something that is needs to taken easily. It's actually hard working. So to decolonize means also like sometimes go right against your family or against your friends. It takes some bravery to to make sure that we unlearn the minds. Sometimes we need to unlearn in order to be able to decolonize, and we need to create memories together to make sure that all the research being done now, it's part of the collective memory now. And there is so many things we can do to to undo the pain I was talking about, but also to make sure that the tree of forgetfulness is not something that we need to grow more. We don't need more trees of forgetfulness. It's actually hurtful. It's damaging. It's toxic for many when we have more trees like that. So it's up to us to now to find a way how to do that. And I'm not in charge. I'm not the person here that says we should do it like this. Or people ask me, there was this guy, can I do ayahuasca? And I said, well, I'm not the one. That's up to you. I can't be I don't know, the conscious mind for you. I mean, please don't give me that burden. I have my own life and I try to do my best for that one, but I can't be responsible for all that. So it's an invitation to create more trees, and it's an invitation to find out how can we view the leaves then. I would say in the regeneration movement, of course, the celebration of life is so much intertwined with the celebration of death, because you need to die sometimes in order to get alive, in order to do the rebirth, in order to make sure that the regeneration process is actually the cycle of life. So that's interesting for us to keep in mind while we are going to the dialogue part. And I think that the dialogue part is also maybe something for us to first hold space to one another, to to give some room for us to share thoughts, to give room to others to make also to take your own spot. If you really want to share your thoughts, take it and do it, because it's also good for you to position yourself in whole. Because if we are considered as trees in this session, trees are intertwined. They are so connected. There is no tree standing on their own. We are all under the trees, are so connected with the roots. So we can't do it alone. So the whole journey of decolonization or reparation or healing, it's never a journey for a person. It's a journey for the collective. And I hope that we have an amazing, I'm looking forward to the dialogues now to find out your thoughts and how you view it. And maybe you have an own journey of becoming a liberated leaf, or maybe you are still feeling the hurt that there wasn't tree of forgetfulness in your family. Or maybe you just want to say, I want to do something with the tree of reciprocity, and I'm going to do it this and this. So this is up to you, what tree you are choosing. And I hope that you liked the story I just presented to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Zhao, for your story. How do you want to do it? Do you want people to ask questions and comments in the chat, or do you want people to unmute and share?
I think unmute, and I don't see people now, so it's I see some faces, but not all. But maybe it's up for us. I don't know how we're going to do it. What is the best plan now? I think just people going to share what they think, and we just listen. I think we have many. Yeah, we have half an hour, so that's good. Who wants to start? Maybe that's a better question.
And if you have questions, they are, of course, also very welcome. If you have more questions for Chau. I think this came as a surprise for people. We were all listening to you.
And then, oh, do I need to talk also?
I can share something. Yes, thank you so much for sharing and also highlighting this important topic and bringing it to greater awareness. I don't really know what I want to share, but I just wanted to connect. So I was quite shocked by what you said, like that there's only 1% of indigenous people in like most South African countries. I didn't realize that it was so little. So that I noticed that was quite shocking. And it's interesting how, you can connect to all this also at a mental level. And now and again, I felt also more like the emotional level. I don't know, there were just moments where I was feeling like, oh, I want to cry, or like there was just emotion running through me. And I think in what you say, like, is such an important part of also, healing, and on wherever side you are, because we're like interconnected, obviously, together to also feel. And so I'm really interested in how can there be kind of a really like collective space to remember, to hear stories, like individual stories that can, of course, there's so much, it's so complex and it's so huge, and it's so much history and so much is forgotten, but just to hear maybe some individual stories and how that is like, be touched by them, and also have a space for for mourning and for decolonizing, how can we, because there's so many unconscious biases, and it's how can we begin to it's like to start operating in a more wholesome way, because I don't think that people like are necessarily not wanting to see. It's just that there's a lack of awareness, and there's not so many spaces to connect with these stories, remember and mourn. And that is, there's like a lot of work to be done. So anyway, that's just what is alive in me. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It's really nice, and I really feel also blessed, because it's like opening doors, and the privilege of doing that, but also with the softness. I think that there is many languages to do that, to open doors, but at least how are we going to do it? And I always trying to find out many languages, because we need to open many doors by many people, and people are so different. So for the one door, I need to be more hard, and for the other, I can be more soft. And to be honest, this is really me being just soft. I see a hand.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Gully, and I've been listening. I think I feel moved to share. To begin with, when you talked a little bit about your story, about being basically kidnapped and brought here, I felt very strongly for you and for all of the children that this happened to. And I think, like the previous person who shared, some of the statistics that you shared, I thought really moved me. I really liked some of the metaphors that you used, trees of forgetting and leaves of remembering. And I think conceptual metaphors and metaphors are so important. And I really liked your presentation. I felt moved a little bit to share my story a little bit. So on the one hand, I'm white passing. On the other hand, on my mother's side, she's an anti-Zionist Jew from Israel. And all of the memory of that side of the family, I don't speak Hebrew, for example. Her parents spoke Yiddish, but never taught her Yiddish. And all of the family on that side in Lithuania were shot into pits. So there was a big collective forgetting. And there was also a rejection. So my grandfather, his family were rabbis. He became an ultra-Zionist. Now, my father is Palestinian. He lives in Ramallah. And right now, there is extermination. There is extermination in terms of the stories of what it is to be a Palestinian, the memory of your land, the memory of your people, the link between identity and land, the link between the stories of nature and what we see happened in the Americas and in Australia and New Zealand is currently happening right now, all around where my father lives. And then, although I don't really want to go into it, my childhood was, again, very, very disrupted. I was very badly abused. I wasn't with my family. And so there was also a loss of sort of forgetting in my life in terms of, where do I come from and who are my family? So I found this concept of forgetting and actually the analysis of power being as much about getting people to forget so that you can impose new narratives and structures for people to be able to act in your interest. And I just, for me, I knew this, and it was very important to remember the power of erasing memory and to think about that a little bit more deeply. So I think I'm complete. Don't really know how that fits in, but I'll share that.
Thank you so much, Toda Rabba, for your story. And I really feel also your part, because I think that childhood is a place where you are shaped as a human. But sometimes childhood can be so hard for people. And how I see it now is that maybe we can create childhood in the now again. I mean, why shouldn't we? So why can't I play? I was at a wedding last week, and they were actually playing songs from my childhood when I was like 10 years old or something. And I know that I had also like a bad childhood, and I felt really good, like a liberated leaves, because I could dance on that song without the worries I had back at the time. So I was dancing like crazy, and I really felt like, oh, this is what I want to share to the kid inside of me. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to bring her on the dance floor, that little kid, and we're going to dance on the song from my childhood. And it was liberation at the dance floor. So this was my response to your story. Are there more people who wants to say something?
I would like to say something. Oh, we're with two people here, so thanks. Right. Thank you, first of all. That was a very beautiful hour, and painful and deep. And to kind of draw upon this line of the tree of memory, I'm working on this notion of indigeneity from a Dutch perspective. So I start asking myself, what does it mean to be indigenous in the Netherlands? What is my ancestry? Where do I come from? And I stumbled upon, or I didn't stumble upon an article, a dear friend of mine gave me an article which was called Roots Deeper Than Whiteness. And that really opened my eyes in terms of that the heritage from my ancestral line has been kind of colonized as well, or it's Christianized, I would say. And from there on, of trying to kind of understand a bit by bit about like what happens with the witch hunts in Europe, and all the voices that haven't been heard here. And it's so extremely difficult for me to find information about this. Some stories of people and some books, documentaries, and that really made me feel a little bit lost. And I really felt that part of your talk, which must be, I mean, way worse. And then I was wondering, like, I'm curious, like, what are the sources of knowledge you still have, and do you have any like tips or ideas where to find this?
Thank you for an amazing question. I think for me, it's always stories. I really like listening to people. And when I was young, I went to my grandmother, and she was able to, she was really a storyteller. So she told me about the Second World War and how her brother was taken away from her, and the pain she was still feeling. She was still crying for her brother, and it was like maybe 80 years ago. And that was for me also the first source are always with elders. We don't have a society where we can easily go to the senior, how do you call that, bejaardenflat? Elder,
Elderly home, maybe.
Yeah, elderly home. But we don't do that. I mean, so I was at the school. It was actually a Catholic school, and during Christmas time, we always went to those places where the elders were, and we needed to show our report how we were doing at schools. The presentation of the children were at their place, at their venue. So we always get this nice interaction between children and elders. And I know many elders now, and some are like my grandmother, for example, in Chile. She's so strong. She can plank for 10 minutes. And it's so funny to see that we don't have many elders in our friends. I mean, we don't do that often. And I took time for doing it. I took time for making sure that I'm not only hooking up with my, my peers, but also trying to make music with elders, and trying to find out how can I restore that connection. And every Saturday I go, not every, I mean, don't, but I try to do every Saturday I go to an elder, and he going to teach me like a lot of words, which I forget all the time. But the funny part is that my presence is so joyful for him, and he is really looking for new sources on his own. So he's trying to find out, okay, what is the story I can share with Chautuileo for next time? And then you see that resources for example, what you're looking for, it's always made up with many people. So it's not only your responsibility. You can ask people like you're doing now, what are yours? But then we need to have, again, the act of reciprocity and making sure that we are guiding you there. So one of the things are elders, and the next, of course, it's nature. It's like going to the beach, and I try to, even though it's cold, I try to take a dive. I try to make sure that every time, and I am at the beach, I'm going to swim, and even when it's winter, because I feel really like powerful afterwards. And the thing that you did as a child, maybe you didn't, but I did, was at the beach making this hole and then going into that hole, and people are actually, how do you call it? Bury you in a way with sand. And I did that many times, just making the hole myself, put myself into that, and just laying there for like a couple of minutes. It's so joyful, and many people are thinking, "What is this crazy woman doing?" But it's funny to find out your way of how to get more into connection with nature, and or go into the trees. I really want to do that. Maybe I'm going to do that on Saturday. To climb in a tree again. Why not? So it's really something that I find in myself is the things that you did as a child. I think that's the best guide, the best roadmap you can do for the now, for you as an adult. So what I did as a child was just exploring. I didn't know the world. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to eat, because your parents are deciding for you what to eat. But I was just exploring. And I think that is the essence of learning, is just to explore and to find out and to be surrounded with elders. And then the next one is children as well. I really like children. They are wisdom keepers. I really love it when you have two tables in, for example, a restaurant, one table with children and one table with adults like us. I really choose the table with children. And I like it to be I sometimes I just want to make a career shift and to be someone who are taking care of babies. It should be like the job of your life to have all the little ones in your surroundings, and they are making mistakes, they are spoiling water, they're doing the crazy things, but I just love watching them and how this person, this spirit, is really exploring it. And this is something I really like, to work intergenerational. So to be with elders, to be with children, to be in the nature, and to explore like you did as a child.
Thank you.
Nobody else is saying something still, then maybe I have a few words. First of all, thank you very much for sharing your story and the story of other people, and something to remember that feels a bit painful, of course, if we talk about we as the Netherlands have an effect there or something like this, and to process this and to disconnect this we a little bit from the system, and also us having to learn to live with this and put it into perspective. And it is sometimes something very heavy to hear. Of course, the consequences are much more heavy, but I'm also very happy that you talked about a lot of positive things and a lot of very inspiring people, and also things that are happening around here that should be spread much more and should be like shared with other people to learn from what indigenous people are putting out there in this world and what they are putting a fight for, and to join them. And yeah, so first of all, just thank you very much. And second, I was thinking if there's anything that can be helped with still on the 12th or on the 14th, where would I read up on this and sign up and be like, yeah, I have 2 helping hands. Let's go.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. This is really like the act of reciprocity into practice. To be honest, I don't have even time to create an to-do list. A lot of things need to be done, and many people are asking me now, what can I do? And I always say, "Oh, okay, let's start with the first one, and that's money." No, no, I was just kidding. I think for me, working intergenerational is very important, and we had kids at the front walking at the day, and one of the kids was actually doing hide and seek, and it was funny to see that the police was actually trying to get him into the line again. But I don't want to have a police doing that. So I need volunteers, making sure that the kids are still very playful and they can laugh, they can do things, silly things, of course, because that is their role to play, but at least no police. So we need to have more people in the sphere here. And I think then we are sitting now in a room with, I don't know how many people. We need to echo more. And I try to, also to be a little bit a private person, because I really like to walk in the nature and to do the silly things I just mentioned, and nobody knows who I am. So I really like my private life, but I also need to echo more. And I need to have people who can do that part as well. So to spread out the flyer, to mention it, that it's coming, to make sure that, I'm running now a campaign, and every day I have an event or something, and I put it on my social media, and I get maybe some likes, but it's not from the likes I'm doing it. It's about sharing it, and still with the hashtag 8020, with the hashtag come to Indigenous Liberation. So it needs to be not a like for me. I don't even need a like, please leave me alone. But I need to have people that is going to be part of this PR machine, and running it like people in the Netherlands are usually doing PR. And that is like a lot of echoes, a lot of, reshare, a lot of those kind of things. So where is the power now? I think the power now is at social media, to make sure that people are actually coming. And now from there, we take over. The Indigenous have a whole program. They are preparing themselves. They have speeches. They have like cultural events. They do a lot of things. But we need to have you now for making sure that we have an audience. And we are talking for not 30 people, but maybe 300, at least 300. So that is my request to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Chao, and thank you all. Yeah, you want to respond? That's
Yeah,
okay.
I just want to know, I find your social media, so I will follow this one, and anything else I should follow still.
I will help you then.
Okay.
And also with other people who wants to do something. It's like a restaurant. It's like horeca. There's always something to do. So you can run with the plates. You can be the chef. You can be like the dishwasher, the wash disher. How do you say it? You can be it all. But we need to work together and to find out how you can be of service. So thank you for giving this opportunity.
And Chao, maybe you can share in the chat your Instagram handle if you feel comfortable sharing that one.
I think it's
and people
one.
can can follow Aralez.
Yeah, Indigenous Liberation. I can spell Indigenous. I can even spell Indigenous.
So things are gonna appear.
Movement. Here, movement, and then you have Aralez. I think those are interesting accounts to follow. Are there more people who wants to, before we go into the practice part, just to have a short reflection for themselves? So how are you going to leave this chat? Maybe that's a nice ending question. How are you going to leave this? And how are you going to,
I can't see your handles in the chat yet. I don't know if you already shared. Maybe.
Oh, I need to do it. Sorry. Iedereen?
Oh, that was een privé.
Yeah, it was I think it was
Okay, so I see that some people are leaving. Before you leave, I want to share some practicalities, and Chau invited us to share. Maybe we can share in the chat how we leave this meeting. If you want to unmute later, that's also very welcome. So these sessions are donation based. I will share a tiki in the chat, and we are inspired by the 80-20 campaign. So we would like to collect all your donations and then give 80% of it to the 80-20 campaign, and the 20% will cover our for this learning session. The next event in this year program is an action day in Amsterdam in the Tuinen van Brasa on October 21st. It's a Saturday. So if you follow us on social media, keep an eye on the next action day. It's Gardens of Brasa is a community garden in Belmer with a story of decolonization as well. So keep an eye on our socials for more practical details.
Can I share one thing about it, because I'm super excited?
Yes.
So they're gonna make a remembrance garden, and they're growing specific kinds of species, kind of plants that are used in a variety of rituals of the people that are governing the garden. And there is also a tea garden. So we're gonna do a little tea ceremony, and we're gonna start planting the memory garden. So in the scope of the memory tree, there is also a memory garden.
Yes, thanks for adding. I've also shared in the chat a link to the Telegram chat group for this year program. So if you want to stay updated on the 4 seasons program that we're doing with the Regeneration Cooperative, you can click this link. You do need Telegram to join the chat. And then we can share more information there. For now, thank you so much for being here. October 21st is our next session, and then we'll have a learning session again in November. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much, Del, for sharing your story. I will stop recording now, but if people still want to respond or say how they will